Introduction. There is a question many people never ask out loud, not because they don't need the answer, but because they are afraid of what it might reveal. Do I need help? For some, the answer is obvious but ignored. For others, the question itself feels uncomfortable, as if asking it means admitting something is wrong. In many places, strength is measured by independence. People are taught to handle their problems quietly, to push through discomfort, and to avoid burdening others. Over time, this belief becomes a habit. Struggles are hidden. Emotions are controlled. And when things become overwhelming, silence feels like the only option. This is how stigma works. It is not always spoken directly. It exists in expectations, in reactions, in the fear of being misunderstood or judged. This audiobook explores that silence. It looks at the reasons people hesitate to ask for help, the stories behind that hesitation, and the quiet moments where change begins. Because asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It is a step toward understanding, connection, and recovery. Chapter 1. The Fear of Being Seen Differently. One of the strongest barriers to asking for help is the fear of how others will respond. A young employee named Mark had been struggling with anxiety at work. He often felt overwhelmed during meetings and found it difficult to focus on tasks. He considered speaking to his manager, but a thought stopped him. What if they see me as incapable? This fear is common. People worry that admitting difficulty will change how others perceive them. Instead of being seen as reliable, they fear being labeled as weak or unfit. Because of this, Mark chose to stay silent. He continued working, but the pressure increased. The fear of being seen differently can prevent people from seeking support, even when it is available. Chapter 2. The Belief that you should handle it alone. Many people grow up with the idea that personal problems should be handled independently. A student named Carla believed that asking for help meant she had failed to manage her own responsibilities. When she began struggling with academic pressure and anxiety, she avoided reaching out to her professors or friends. She told herself that others were dealing with their own problems and that she should do the same. This belief created isolation. Handling challenges alone may seem like strength, but it can limit access to support and solutions. Recognizing that independence and support can coexist is an important step. Chapter 3. The Stigma Around Mental Health. Societal attitudes play a significant role in shaping behavior. A factory worker named Lewis noticed that discussions about mental health were often dismissed in his workplace. When someone mentioned feeling overwhelmed, it was treated lightly or turned into a joke. This environment made it difficult for him to express his own struggles. He feared that speaking up would lead to similar reactions. Stigma is reinforced when mental health is not taken seriously. Changing these attitudes requires awareness and open conversations. Chapter 4. The Fear of Judgment. Judgment can take many forms, including criticism, misunderstanding, or dismissal. A young mother named Elaine considered talking to her family about her emotional exhaustion. She had been feeling overwhelmed with responsibilities and lacked support. However, she hesitated. She worried that others might think she was not handling her role well. This fear prevented her from expressing her needs. Judgment, whether real or anticipated, can create a barrier to communication. Understanding this fear can help individuals find safer ways to seek support. Chapter 5. Not knowing where to start. Even when a person recognizes the need for help, they may not know how to begin. A college student named Ryan realized that his stress and anxiety were affecting his daily life. He thought about seeking help but felt unsure about the process. Should he talk to a friend, a counselor, a family member? This uncertainty led to inaction. Providing clear information about available resources can make it easier for people to take the first step. Chapter 6. The Fear of Being a Burden. Many individuals believe that sharing their struggles will place a burden on others. A call center agent named Nina avoided talking to her friends about her anxiety. She believed they already had enough to deal with. Instead, she kept her feelings to herself. This belief can lead to isolation and increased stress. In reality, many people are willing to provide support when given the opportunity. Recognizing this can help reduce the fear of being a burden. Chapter 7. The Habit of Silence. Silence can become a learned behavior. A teacher named Rosa had spent years managing her stress without discussing it. Over time, this became her default response. Even when she wanted to open up, she found it difficult. Habits take time to change. Breaking the habit of silence requires intentional effort and supportive environments. Chapter 8. Cultural Expectations. Cultural values can influence how people approach mental health. A young man named Carlo grew up in a family where emotional expression was limited. Problems were expected to be handled privately. When he began experiencing anxiety, he followed the same pattern. He did not consider seeking help because it was not something he had seen others do. Understanding cultural influences can help address barriers to seeking support. Chapter 9. The Fear of Losing Control. Asking for help can feel like giving up control. A business owner named Victor worried that sharing his struggles would make him appear less capable. He believed that maintaining control meant handling everything independently. This belief prevented him from seeking support, even when he needed it. Learning that asking for help can be part of maintaining control is an important realization. Chapter 10. Waiting too long. Delaying help can make challenges more difficult to manage. A nurse named Angela noticed early signs of burnout but chose to ignore them. She believed she could manage on her own. Over time, her stress increased, affecting her performance and well-being. By the time she sought help, the situation had become more complex. Early intervention can prevent escalation. Recognizing the importance of timely support is essential. Chapter 11. Denial as Protection. Denial is not always a refusal to see the truth. Sometimes, it is a way to cope with something that feels too overwhelming to face. A young accountant named Jerome began noticing changes in his behavior. He was more irritable, had trouble sleeping, and struggled to focus at work. People around him started to notice, but when they asked, he dismissed it. "I'm just tired." He repeated that explanation so often that he started to believe it. Denial can create temporary comfort. It allows a person to continue functioning without confronting what is happening internally. But over time, it delays the opportunity to address the real issue. Jerome continued his routine, but his symptoms intensified. What started as mild stress developed into persistent anxiety. Denial protected him at first, but it also prevented him from seeking help early. Recognizing denial is difficult because it feels like normal behavior. It often requires reflection or external feedback to become visible. Chapter 12. Shame and Self-Judgment. Shame is one of the most powerful reasons people avoid asking for help. A university student named Mia struggled with depression during her second year. She found it difficult to attend classes, complete assignments, and maintain her usual energy. Instead of seeing this as a condition that needed support, she blamed herself. She believed she was being lazy. She compared herself to classmates who seemed to manage their responsibilities without difficulty. This comparison reinforced her sense of shame. Shame often shifts the focus from the problem to the person. Instead of thinking, "I need help," the thought becomes, "There is something wrong with me." This mindset creates resistance to seeking support. Understanding that mental health challenges are not personal failures is an important step in reducing shame. Chapter 13. Past Experiences of Being Dismissed. Previous experiences can shape how a person approaches help in the future. A young man named Brian once tried to open up to a friend about his struggles. The response he received was dismissive. "You're overthinking. Just relax." That interaction stayed with him. When he began struggling again, he chose not to share. He assumed that others would respond in the same way. Past experiences, especially negative ones, can create hesitation and distrust. They can make a person believe that seeking help will not lead to understanding. Rebuilding trust requires finding the right people and environments where support is genuine. Chapter 14. Not wanting to appear weak. In many environments, strength is associated with resilience and independence. A construction worker named Joel worked in a setting where toughness was valued. Complaints were discouraged and emotional struggles were rarely discussed. When he began feeling overwhelmed, he kept it to himself. He believed that admitting difficulty would make him appear weak. This belief is reinforced in many social settings, particularly where vulnerability is not encouraged. Redefining strength is important. Strength includes recognizing limits and taking steps to address them. Chapter 15. Comparing struggles. People often minimize their own struggles by comparing them to others. A student named Denise felt overwhelmed by academic pressure and personal issues. However, she told herself that others had more serious problems. Because of this, she believed she did not have a valid reason to ask for help. Comparison can invalidate personal experiences. Every individual's capacity is different. What feels manageable for one person may be overwhelming for another. Recognizing that all struggles are valid can help individuals feel more comfortable seeking support. Chapter 16. Fear of not being understood. Communication can be difficult when experiences are complex. A graphic designer named Lisa found it hard to explain what she was feeling. Her thoughts were scattered, and her emotions were difficult to describe. She worried that even if she tried to explain, others would not understand. This fear prevented her from reaching out. Understanding does not always require perfect explanations. Finding someone willing to listen without judgment can make a significant difference. Chapter 17. The pressure to stay strong for others. Some individuals feel responsible for maintaining stability for those around them. A father named Carlo believed that he needed to remain strong for his family. He avoided showing vulnerability because he did not want to worry them. Even when he felt overwhelmed, he continued to present a composed image. This pressure can lead to emotional suppression. While intentions may be positive, it can prevent individuals from receiving the support they need. Sharing struggles does not reduce a person's ability to support others. Chapter 18. Misunderstanding mental health. Lack of knowledge can create barriers. A delivery driver named Marco experienced symptoms of anxiety, but did not recognize them as such. He believed his reactions were simply part of his personality. Because of this, he did not consider seeking help. Education plays a key role in reducing stigma. Understanding mental health allows individuals to recognize when support may be needed. Chapter 19. Fear of change. Seeking help often leads to change, and change can be uncomfortable. A business owner named Victor worried that if he sought help, he might need to alter his routine, reduce his workload, or face difficult truths. This fear kept him from taking action. Change does not always happen immediately or drastically. It often occurs gradually and can lead to improved well-being. Chapter 20. Feeling stuck. Some individuals feel trapped in their situation. A bank teller named Sophia believed that her stress was simply part of her job and that nothing could be done to improve it. This belief reduced her motivation to seek help. Feeling stuck can create a sense of hopelessness. Recognizing that change is possible is an important step toward action. Chapter 21. The fear of labels. Labels can carry stigma. A student named Miguel hesitated to seek professional help because he was concerned about being diagnosed with a mental health condition. He worried that the label would define him. While labels can provide clarity, they can also feel limiting. Understanding that a diagnosis is a tool, not a definition, can reduce this fear. Chapter 22. Wanting to avoid difficult conversations. Conversations about mental health can feel uncomfortable. A customer service agent named Nina avoided talking about her struggles because she did not want to answer questions or explain her situation. Avoidance can provide temporary relief, but it prevents meaningful support. Learning to approach these conversations gradually can make them more manageable. Chapter 23. The influence of social media. Social media often presents a curated version of reality. A young professional named Andrea compared her life to others she saw online. Everyone appeared successful, happy, and in control. This made her feel that her struggles were abnormal. Social media can distort perceptions. Recognizing that it does not reflect the full reality of people's lives can reduce pressure. Chapter 24. Fear of losing opportunities. Some individuals worry that admitting struggles will affect their opportunities. A nurse named Kevin hesitated to speak about his stress at work. He feared it might impact his career advancement. This concern led him to remain silent. Workplace environments play a role in how comfortable people feel seeking support. Creating supportive environments can reduce this fear. Chapter 25. Normalizing suffering. In some cases, suffering becomes normalized. A factory worker named Lewis believed that stress and exhaustion were simply part of life. Because of this belief, he did not consider seeking help. Normalizing suffering can prevent individuals from recognizing when support is needed. Understanding that improvement is possible is important. Chapter 26. The role of pride. Pride can influence decisions. A young man named Brian felt that asking for help would mean admitting he could not handle his problems. He valued independence and self-reliance. While these qualities can be positive, they can also create barriers. Balancing independence with openness to support is important. Chapter 27. Waiting for the right time. Some people delay seeking help while waiting for a better moment. A student named Mia told herself she would seek support after exams, after deadlines, or after certain responsibilities were completed. That moment never seemed to come. Delaying action can prolong difficulties. There may never be a perfect time to ask for help. Chapter 28. Fear of emotional exposure. Opening up requires vulnerability. A teacher named Rosa worried that if she started talking about her struggles, she might become overwhelmed with emotion. This fear prevented her from initiating conversations. Emotional expression can feel intense, but it can also provide relief. Learning to manage emotions during conversations can make this process easier. Chapter 29. Doubting the effectiveness of help. Some individuals question whether help will make a difference. A mechanic named Robert believed that talking about his problems would not change his situation. This belief reduced his motivation to seek support. Understanding the benefits of different forms of help can address this doubt. Chapter 30. Reaching the point of realization. Despite all the barriers, there often comes a moment of clarity. A call center agent named Jerome reached a point where his stress began affecting multiple areas of his life. He realized that continuing without support was no longer sustainable. This realization did not remove all his fears, but it motivated him to take the first step. Change often begins with awareness. Recognizing the need for help is the foundation for overcoming stigma. Chapter 31. The first step feels the hardest. The idea of asking for help is often more difficult than the action itself. A young employee named Mark spent weeks thinking about talking to someone about his anxiety. He rehearsed conversations in his head, imagined different outcomes, and considered what people might say. Each time he felt ready, doubt would return. He questioned whether his situation was serious enough. He wondered if he was overreacting. He told himself he could wait a little longer. This internal conflict delayed his decision. One day, after another overwhelming afternoon at work, he finally sent a short message to a trusted coworker asking if they could talk. The message was simple, but it represented something significant. The first step often feels the hardest because it requires breaking a pattern of silence. Once that step is taken, the process of seeking help becomes more real and more possible. Chapter 32. Saying it out loud. Putting feelings into words can change how a person experiences them. A college student named Carla had been carrying stress and anxiety for months. When she finally sat down with a friend, she struggled to begin. At first, her sentences were unclear. She paused often, unsure of how to explain what she was feeling. But as she continued, her thoughts became more organized. She realized that speaking allowed her to process what had been building internally. Saying things out loud can make them feel less overwhelming. It creates space between the person and their thoughts. It also allows others to respond, offering perspective and support. Chapter 33. Realizing people can listen. One of the biggest fears about asking for help is not being heard. A call center agent named Nina expected that when she opened up, people would interrupt, give quick advice, or dismiss her feelings. When she finally spoke to a close friend, the experience was different. Her friend listened without interrupting. There was no immediate solution offered, no attempt to fix everything. There was simply attention and understanding. This experience challenged Nina's expectations. It showed her that there are people who are capable of listening without judgment. Realizing this can make future conversations easier. Chapter 34. Not all responses will be perfect. Seeking help does not always lead to ideal responses. A young man named Brian decided to share his struggles with a family member. He hoped for understanding, but the response was limited. You just need to stay positive. While the intention may have been good, it did not address what Brian was experiencing. This interaction left him feeling discouraged. However, one imperfect response does not represent all possible support. It is important to recognize that not everyone will respond in the way a person needs. Finding the right people may take time. Chapter 35. Choosing the right person. Support depends on the environment and the people involved. A teacher named Rosa considered who she felt comfortable speaking with. She thought about her relationships and identified one colleague who had previously shown understanding in difficult situations. When she opened up, the conversation felt safe. The colleague listened, asked thoughtful questions, and did not rush the discussion. Choosing the right person can make a significant difference. Not everyone needs to know everything, but having at least one supportive connection can be valuable. Chapter 36. Understanding professional help. Support does not only come from personal relationships. A nurse named Angela decided to seek professional help after realizing that her stress was affecting her daily life. At first, she was unsure of what to expect. She wondered how sessions would work and whether she would be able to explain herself clearly. During her first session, she found that the environment was structured and focused. The professional asked questions, provided guidance, and helped her understand her experiences. Professional help offers tools and perspectives that may not be available in casual conversations. Understanding this can reduce hesitation. Chapter 37. Letting go of the need to explain everything perfectly. Many people delay asking for help because they feel they need to fully understand their situation first. A student named Miguel believed he needed to have clear answers before speaking to a counselor. He thought he needed to explain everything in a structured way. When he finally attended a session, he realized that this was not necessary. He was allowed to speak gradually, to clarify his thoughts over time, and to explore his experiences with guidance. Help is not dependent on perfect explanations. It begins with willingness to share, even if the words are incomplete. Chapter 38. The Relief of Being Understood. Feeling understood can have a significant impact. A delivery driver named Marco described his experiences with anxiety to a support group. As others shared similar stories, he realized that his reactions were not unusual. This reduced his sense of isolation. Understanding does not remove all challenges, but it provides reassurance. It shows that a person's experiences are valid and shared by others. Chapter 39. Breaking the Pattern of Silence. Silence is often reinforced over time. A business owner named Victor had spent years managing stress without discussing it. This pattern became part of his routine. Breaking that pattern required intentional effort. He started by acknowledging his stress to himself, then gradually shared it with a trusted friend. Each step challenged the habit of silence. Patterns can be changed, but it requires consistency and awareness. Chapter 40. Accepting support without guilt. Receiving help can feel uncomfortable for those who are used to giving it. A young mother named Elaine felt guilty when others offered support. She believed she should be able to manage everything on her own. When a family member offered to help with daily tasks, she hesitated. Over time, she learned that accepting help does not mean failure. It allows for balance and recovery. Support is not something that needs to be earned. It is something that can be accepted. Chapter 41. The Role of Honest Conversations. Honest conversations create clarity. A student named Denise began having regular discussions with a friend about her stress and academic pressure. These conversations allowed her to express concerns, receive feedback, and feel supported. Honesty strengthens connections. It creates an environment where support can develop naturally. Chapter 42. Learning to ask clearly. Asking for help can be more effective when it is specific. A call center agent named Jerome realized that vague statements about feeling stressed did not always lead to meaningful support. When he began expressing his needs more clearly, such as asking for time to rest or requesting assistance with tasks, responses improved. Clarity helps others understand how to provide support. Chapter 43. Building a Support Network. Support is not limited to one person. A nurse named Kevin gradually built a network that included friends, family, and professional support. Each connection provided a different type of assistance. Having multiple sources of support creates stability. It reduces reliance on a single person and allows for diverse perspectives. Chapter 44. Normalizing asking for help. Behavior can influence others. A teacher named Rosa noticed that when she openly discussed her experiences, others felt more comfortable doing the same. This created a more supportive environment. Normalizing conversations about mental health can reduce stigma. It encourages others to seek help without fear. Chapter 45. Small changes in perspective. Changing how a person views help can make a difference. A young professional named Andrea began to see asking for help as a practical decision rather than a personal failure. This shift reduced her hesitation. Perspective influences behavior. Adjusting how help is viewed can make it easier to seek. Chapter 46. Recognizing progress in openness. Openness develops over time. A student named Mia noticed that she became more comfortable discussing her feelings with others. This did not happen immediately, but through repeated experiences. Recognizing progress can reinforce positive behavior. Chapter 47. Supporting others in return. Receiving support can lead to providing it. A young man named Brian began offering support to friends who were experiencing similar challenges. This created mutual understanding. Support is often shared. Helping others can reinforce one's own growth. Chapter 48. Reducing the fear of judgment. Repeated positive experiences can reduce fear. A cashier named Angela noticed that as she continued to open up, her fear of judgment decreased. She realized that many of her concerns were based on assumptions rather than reality. Experience can challenge fear. Chapter 49. Creating safe conversations. Safe environments encourage openness. A business owner named Victor worked to create a workplace where employees felt comfortable discussing stress and challenges. This improved communication and overall well-being. Creating safe spaces benefits everyone involved. Chapter 50. Taking ownership of your well-being. Seeking help is part of taking responsibility for one's health. A student named Carla realized that addressing her mental health was not something to avoid, but something to prioritize. This mindset helped her continue seeking support when needed. Taking ownership leads to better outcomes. Chapter 51. When asking for help changes you. There is a moment after someone asks for help when something begins to shift internally. It is not always immediate, and it does not solve everything at once, but it creates movement. A young employee named Mark noticed this after he began opening up to a coworker and later to a counselor. At first, the conversations felt uncomfortable. He was not used to sharing his thoughts, especially the ones he had kept hidden for so long. But over time, something changed. He began to understand himself better. He noticed patterns in his thinking. He started recognizing when his stress was building instead of waiting until it overwhelmed him. Asking for help did not change his life overnight, but it changed how he approached it. This is one of the most important outcomes of seeking support. It creates awareness, and awareness leads to better decisions. The person who asks for help is not the same person who remains silent. Something within them begins to grow. Chapter 52. The strength in admitting you need support. Admitting the need for support requires honesty, and honesty can feel uncomfortable. A student named Carla had spent a long time trying to manage everything on her own. She believed that if she worked harder or stayed more disciplined, she could overcome her struggles without involving anyone else. But as her stress increased, she reached a point where she could no longer ignore it. Admitting that she needed help felt like acknowledging a limitation, something she had avoided for a long time. However, instead of weakening her, this admission gave her direction. It allowed her to stop guessing and start addressing the problem directly. There is strength in recognizing when something cannot be handled alone. It is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of awareness. Chapter 53. Breaking generational silence. In many families, emotional struggles are rarely discussed. A young man named Carlo grew up in an environment where problems were handled privately. His parents worked hard and rarely spoke about stress or emotional difficulties. Because of this, he learned to do the same. When he began experiencing anxiety, his first instinct was to keep it to himself. But after months of struggle, he decided to approach the situation differently. He started a conversation with a close family member, something that had never been done before in that context. The conversation was not perfect, but it was a beginning. Breaking generational silence is not easy. It requires stepping outside of learned behavior and creating a new pattern. But when one person begins to speak, it can influence others to do the same. Chapter 54. Rewriting what strength means. Many people grow up with a fixed idea of what strength looks like. A construction worker named Joel believed that strength meant endurance. It meant continuing no matter how difficult things became and avoiding any sign of struggle. This belief shaped how he handled his challenges. But over time, he realized that this approach was not sustainable. When he finally opened up to a trusted friend, he experienced something unexpected. He did not feel weaker. He felt relieved. This moment challenged his understanding of strength. He began to see that strength is not only about pushing forward, but also about knowing when to pause, reflect, and seek support. Rewriting what strength means can change how a person approaches their struggles. Chapter 55. The Role of Environment in Openness. The environment around a person can influence whether they feel comfortable asking for help. A nurse named Angela worked in a setting where stress was common, but rarely discussed. Everyone focused on completing their tasks, and there was little space for personal conversations. Because of this, she kept her struggles to herself. Later, she joined a team where open communication was encouraged. Colleagues regularly checked in with each other, and discussions about stress were normalized. In this environment, Angela felt more comfortable sharing her experiences. This change highlighted how important surroundings can be. Supportive environments make it easier for individuals to express themselves without fear. Chapter 56. Learning that you deserve help. Some individuals struggle with the belief that they are not deserving of support. A call center agent named Nina often minimized her own struggles. She believed that others had more serious problems and that her situation did not justify seeking help. This belief kept her silent. Over time, she began to understand that support is not limited to extreme situations. Every person has the right to seek help when they feel overwhelmed. Recognizing this can remove unnecessary barriers. Help is not something that must be earned through suffering. It is something that is available when needed. Chapter 57. The Courage to be Honest with Yourself. Before a person can ask for help, they often need to be honest with themselves. A student named Miguel spent months ignoring his feelings. He stayed busy, avoided reflection, and focused on external responsibilities. But the signs became harder to ignore. He noticed his lack of motivation, his difficulty concentrating, and his constant fatigue. Acknowledging these changes was difficult, but it was necessary. Honesty with oneself is often the first step toward change. It allows a person to move from avoidance to action. Chapter 58. From Fear to Action. Fear does not disappear before action. A delivery driver named Marco still felt anxious about opening up, even after deciding that he needed help. The fear of judgment, misunderstanding, and vulnerability remained, but he chose to act despite that fear. He reached out to a friend and later explored professional support. Action does not require the absence of fear. It requires the decision to move forward in spite of it. This shift from fear to action is a critical moment in breaking stigma. Chapter 59. Real conversations create real change. Meaningful conversations can influence how a person views their situation. A teacher named Rosa began having regular discussions with a colleague about stress and emotional well-being. These conversations provided new perspectives and practical insights. They also created a sense of connection. Talking about mental health does not always lead to immediate solutions, but it can create understanding, and understanding can lead to change. Chapter 60. The Ripple Effect of Speaking Up. When one person chooses to speak up, it can influence others. A young professional named Andrea noticed that after she shared her experiences, her coworkers began opening up as well. This created a more supportive environment. The ripple effect shows that individual actions can contribute to larger changes. Breaking stigma is not only a personal process, it is also a collective one. Chapter 61. Letting go of the fear of labels. Labels can feel limiting, but they can also provide clarity. A student named Mia initially resisted seeking professional help because she was concerned about being labeled. She feared that a diagnosis would define her. Over time, she learned that labels are tools used to understand and address specific challenges. They do not define a person's identity. Letting go of this fear allowed her to access the support she needed. Chapter 62. Understanding that help looks different for everyone. There is no single way to seek help. A mechanic named Robert found that talking to friends was helpful, while others benefited more from structured professional support. Different approaches work for different individuals. Understanding this can reduce pressure to follow a specific path. The important factor is finding what works. Chapter 63. The Importance of Consistency. Seeking help is not always a one-time action. A nurse named Kevin realized that maintaining his well-being required ongoing effort. He continued attending sessions, maintaining routines, and staying connected with his support network. Consistency creates stability. It allows progress to build over time. Chapter 64. Facing Setbacks Without Shame. Setbacks can occur even after progress. A student named Denise experienced moments where her stress returned. Instead of feeling discouraged, she learned to approach these moments with understanding. Setbacks do not erase progress. They are part of the process. Chapter 65. Building a New Relationship with Yourself. Asking for help can change how a person views themselves. A freelance writer named Anna began to treat herself with more patience and understanding. She reduced self-criticism and focused on growth. This shift improved her overall well-being. The relationship a person has with themselves is central to recovery. Chapter 66. Learning to Speak Without Fear. Over time, communication becomes easier. A call center agent named Jerome noticed that he became more comfortable expressing his thoughts and feelings. This did not happen immediately, but through repeated experiences. Practice builds confidence. Chapter 67. Creating Space for Others to Speak. When individuals feel supported, they can create that support for others. A young man named Brian began encouraging open conversations among his friends. This created a safe environment for sharing. Support can be extended beyond oneself. Chapter 68. Redefining Independence. Independence does not mean isolation. A business owner named Victor learned that seeking help does not reduce independence. It strengthens it by providing additional resources and perspectives. Redefining independence allows for balance. Chapter 69. Living Without the Weight of Silence. Silence can feel heavy. A young mother named Elaine described the relief she felt after opening up about her struggles. The weight she had been carrying became lighter. Speaking reduces pressure. Chapter 70. Moving Forward Without Stigma. Breaking stigma is an ongoing process. A teacher named Rosa continued to promote open conversations about mental health in her environment. This contributed to a more supportive culture. Moving forward without stigma allows individuals to seek help freely. Chapter 71. The moment you realize you're not alone. There is a moment in the journey when isolation begins to fade. It does not happen suddenly. It often begins in a quiet conversation, a shared experience, or a simple realization that someone else understands. A young employee named Mark experienced this during a group discussion he almost did not attend. He listened as others spoke about their struggles, stress, anxiety, pressure, and self-doubt. Their stories were different, but the feelings were familiar. For the first time, he did not feel like he had to explain everything. He did not feel like he was the only one experiencing these thoughts. This realization did not solve all his problems, but it changed how he viewed them. Feeling alone can make struggles seem larger. Recognizing that others share similar experiences can reduce that weight. Chapter 72. The Quiet Confidence That Builds. Confidence does not always return in obvious ways. A student named Carla noticed small changes in how she approached her daily life. She spoke more openly, asked questions when she needed clarification, and allowed herself to admit when she did not understand something. These actions may have seemed simple, but they reflected growth. Confidence is often rebuilt through repeated experiences of honesty and openness. It is not about eliminating fear, but about acting despite it. Chapter 73. The freedom in letting go of judgment. Judgment, whether from others or from oneself, can be limiting. A call center agent named Nina spent a long time worrying about how others perceived her. She avoided sharing her struggles because she feared negative reactions. Over time, she began to question this fear. She realized that much of the judgment she feared existed in her own thoughts rather than in reality. Letting go of this fear allowed her to express herself more freely. Freedom comes when a person is no longer controlled by the expectation of judgment. Chapter 74. Choosing honesty over comfort. Avoiding discomfort can prevent growth. A teacher named Rosa recognized that staying silent felt easier in the moment, but it did not improve her situation. When she chose to speak honestly, the conversations were not always easy, but they were meaningful. Honesty can be uncomfortable, but it creates opportunities for understanding and support. Choosing honesty over comfort is a step toward change. Chapter 75. The strength in being open repeatedly. Openness is not a one-time action. A nurse named Angela found that maintaining her well-being required consistent communication. She continued to share her experiences, even during periods when things were stable. This allowed her to address challenges early. Openness becomes easier with practice, but it requires intention. Chapter 76. When others begin to change too. Individual actions can influence group behavior. A young professional named Andrea noticed that after she began speaking openly about stress, her colleagues started doing the same. Conversations became more supportive and less judgmental. This shift improved the overall environment. Change often begins with one person. Chapter 77. Understanding that you did not have to do it alone. Looking back, many people realized that support was available even when they did not seek it. A mechanic named Robert reflected on his experiences and recognized that there were people who would have helped if he had reached out earlier. This realization was not meant to create regret, but to reinforce the importance of seeking support moving forward. Understanding that help is available can change future decisions. Chapter 78. The role of self-acceptance. Accepting oneself is a gradual process. A student named Mia began to acknowledge both her strengths and her struggles without judgment. This balanced perspective reduced internal conflict. Self-acceptance does not mean ignoring challenges. It means recognizing them without defining oneself by them. Chapter 79. Letting go of the need to appear perfect. Perfection can create pressure. A business owner named Victor realized that his need to appear in control at all times prevented him from being honest about his struggles. When he allowed himself to be imperfect, he experienced less stress. Letting go of perfection allows for more authentic interactions. Chapter 80. The relief of being real. Authenticity creates connection. A young mother named Elaine described the difference between pretending to be okay and being honest about her feelings. When she allowed herself to be real, she felt a sense of relief. Authenticity reduces the effort required to maintain a false image. It creates space for genuine support. Chapter 81. Living without constant fear. Fear may not disappear completely, but it becomes more manageable. A delivery driver named Marco noticed that situations that once caused intense anxiety became easier to handle over time. This was not because the situations changed, but because his response to them changed. Managing fear is a skill that develops with practice. Chapter 82. Finding stability in openness. Openness can create consistency. A call center agent named Jerome found that regularly expressing his thoughts helped maintain emotional balance. Instead of allowing stress to build, he addressed it early. This created a sense of stability. Chapter 83. supporting others without losing yourself. Helping others is valuable, but balance is important. A young man named Brian began supporting friends who were struggling. He also learned to maintain his own boundaries. Supporting others does not mean neglecting personal needs. Balance ensures sustainability. Chapter 84. Recognizing how far you've come. Reflection can provide perspective. A nurse named Kevin looked back at his experiences and noticed significant progress. He compared his current state to where he had been before. This recognition reinforced his efforts. Progress is often clearer when viewed over time. Chapter 85. Creating a life that feels manageable. A manageable life is not free of challenges, but it is balanced. A student named Denise focused on creating routines that supported her well-being. She prioritized tasks, allowed time for rest, and maintained connections. This structure made daily life more manageable. Chapter 86. Letting go of old beliefs. Beliefs can change. A construction worker named Joel let go of the idea that he had to handle everything alone. He replaced it with a more balanced perspective. Changing beliefs can influence behavior and improve well-being. Chapter 87. The power of shared experiences. Sharing experiences creates understanding. A teacher named Rosa continued to encourage conversations about mental health. These discussions helped others feel less isolated. Shared experiences build connection. Chapter 88. Living with greater awareness. Awareness allows for better decision-making. A young professional named Andrea became more aware of her stress levels and adjusted her routine accordingly. This prevented escalation. Awareness supports long-term well-being. Chapter 89. Moving forward with less fear. Fear becomes less dominant over time. A mechanic named Robert noticed that he approached situations with more confidence. This change reflected growth. Reducing fear allows for more freedom. Chapter 90. Choosing openness every day. Openness is a daily choice. A student named Mia continued to express her thoughts and feelings honestly. This maintained her progress. Consistency is important. Chapter 91. Building a supportive environment. Environment influences behavior. A business owner named Victor worked to create a supportive workplace. This encouraged openness. Supportive environments benefit everyone. Chapter 92. The importance of listening. Listening is a key part of support. A call center agent named Nina focused on listening to others without judgment. This strengthened relationships. Listening creates understanding. Chapter 93. Accepting that growth takes time. Growth is gradual. A nurse named Angela accepted that change would not happen immediately. This reduced frustration. Patience supports progress. Chapter 94. The strength in continuing. Continuing requires effort. A delivery driver named Marco maintained his progress through consistent actions. This reinforced his growth. Consistency builds strength. Chapter 95. Living with more freedom. Freedom comes from reduced fear and increased understanding. A young mother named Elaine felt more at ease expressing herself. This improved her well-being. Freedom allows for authentic living. Chapter 96. Trusting yourself more. Trust develops over time. A student named Miguel became more confident in his decisions. This reflected progress. Trust supports independence. Chapter 97. Creating meaningful connections. Connections provide support. A young man named Brian maintained relationships that encouraged openness. This created stability. Meaningful connections are valuable. Chapter 98. Letting your story help others. Experiences can inspire others. A teacher named Rosa shared her journey to support students. This created impact. Stories can influence change. Chapter 99, Living Without the Weight of Stigma. Stigma loses its influence when challenged. A young professional named Andrea no longer felt restricted by fear of judgment. This allowed her to live more freely. Breaking stigma creates opportunity. Chapter 100, Asking for Help is Strength. The journey leads to a new understanding. A call center agent named Jerome reflected on his experiences and recognized that asking for help was one of the most important decisions he made. It did not remove all challenges, but it changed how he faced them. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It is a recognition of one's needs, a step toward growth, and an act of strength that can shape the course of a person's life. Final reflection. Questions that stay with you. As this journey comes to an end, the stories may fade, but the questions remain. Not questions that demand immediate answers, but questions that invite honesty. Questions that ask you to pause, to think, and to look inward. How many times have you told yourself that you were fine, even when you were not? How often have you chosen silence, not because you had nothing to say, but because you were afraid of how it would be received? Have there been moments when you needed support but convinced yourself that you should handle it alone? Think about the reasons. Was it fear of judgment? Was it the belief that others would not understand? Or was it the idea that asking for help would change how people see you? Now consider this. What has silence cost you? How much energy has been spent holding everything in? How many opportunities for support have been missed because of hesitation? And what might have been different if you had spoken up sooner? Reflection. What did you learn? Throughout these chapters, you have heard different stories, different struggles, and different turning points. But beneath them all, there is a common thread. People are not alone in what they experience. The fear of asking for help is shared by many. The hesitation, the doubt, the silence, these are not personal failures. They are patterns shaped by beliefs, experiences, and environments. But patterns can change. So what did you learn from these stories? Did you notice how often fear was based on assumptions rather than reality? Did you see how one conversation could begin to shift everything? Did you recognize that strength is not about handling everything alone, but about knowing when to reach out? And most importantly, did you begin to see yourself in any of these stories? A question that matters. If there is one question to carry forward, it is this. What is stopping you from asking for help? Not in a general sense, but in your own life right now. Is it fear? Is it uncertainty? Is it habit? Whatever the reason, it is worth examining, because understanding that barrier is the first step toward moving past it, looking forward. Change does not happen all at once. It begins with awareness. Then it moves into small decisions, a conversation, a message, a moment of honesty. You do not have to share everything at once. You do not have to have the perfect words. You only need to begin. Closing thought. As you move forward, remember this. The struggle to ask for help does not mean you are weak. It means you are human. And the moment you choose to reach out, even in the smallest way, you are already changing the story. So ask yourself again, what did you learn? And more importantly, what will you do with it? Outro. At the beginning, there was silence. Not because there was nothing to say, but because saying it felt too difficult. You have heard the reasons, the fear of judgment, the pressure to stay strong, the belief that you should handle everything alone. You have seen how that silence grows, how it becomes a habit, how it convinces people to carry more than they were ever meant to carry by themselves. But you have also seen something else. You have seen what happens when that silence begins to break, not all at once. Not perfectly, but gradually. A conversation, a moment of honesty, a decision to speak even when it feels uncomfortable. And that is where everything starts to change. Because asking for help does not erase struggle. It does not make life suddenly easy, but it does something just as important. It reminds you that you do not have to face everything alone. Now, as this story comes to an end, what matters most is not what was said here. It is what stays with you. So take a moment. Think about everything you have heard. Think about the stories, the patterns, the fears that may have felt familiar, and ask yourself honestly, what have you been carrying in silence? What have you been avoiding saying? What has been stopping you from asking for help? There is no need to answer immediately, but there is value in the question, because awareness is where change begins. And change does not require a perfect plan. It begins with something small, a message, a conversation, a willingness to be honest even if the words are not clear yet. You do not have to explain everything. You do not have to have all the answers. You only need to begin. And maybe that beginning is not something anyone else will see. Maybe it is a quiet decision, a thought that says, I don't have to keep this to myself anymore. If that thought exists, even for a moment, then something has already shifted. So as you move forward, remember this. The fear of asking for help does not define you. The silence you've carried does not define you. What defines you is the choice you make next. Whether you continue to hold everything in, or whether you take that step, however small it may be, toward being heard. Because your story is not meant to stay silent. And whatever you are facing, you were never meant to face it alone.